What you guys, got another video on how to uninstall Linux from a Windows dual boot without breaking Windows. If you've got a dual booted system with Windows and Linux like this one and it's on the same drive, then this video is for you. I'm going to show you how to completely remove Linux in case you want to put it onto a separate drive, which is probably the best way to install a dual boot, Windows on one drive and Linux on another. But if you've got it installed like this on one single drive, then you really might want to think about uninstalling it and putting it on a separate drive. Another thing to remember is make sure you back up all of your data on Windows and Linux just in case something goes wrong and all of a sudden your PC doesn't boot and you end up losing all of your data. That's important. So this is a typical dual boot system right here that we have with Windows 11 and Linux Mint. Now, whether you're using another version of Linux, it will still work. So on both systems, make sure you've got all of your data backed up. Once you're inside Windows here, you can right click on the start button and click disk management, or you can do a search and just type disk management inside the search box and look for the disk management tool, which will be create and format hard disk partitions. Once you click on this, it should open up the disk management tool. Let me just eject that CD-ROM with Linux Mint on it so that doesn't confuse you. And we can then take a look at the actual drive itself. So here is the one drive that we have on the system. And what Linux has done is partitioned it. So we've got our Windows partition here with C drive on it. And the Linux partition doesn't have any drive letter. The other two are just your recovery partition and your EFI system partition for Windows. So what we're going to be concentrating on is removing and deleting this volume here, which is your Linux volume. Make sure you're deleting the right partition, otherwise you will end up bricking your system and losing your data. So we've done that and you should see unallocated space here. Now we can right click on the C drive here and extend our volume. This will take up all of that unallocated space and make the C drive a bigger drive. So just going to go through here and click next and then finish. And you should see the drive getting extended into the C drive. That's now done, but we still have a lot of boot records and also other information left on the computer from Linux. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, if you dual booted just to test Linux out, you may want to follow this to remove Linux if it's something that you don't want to use. Or maybe you want to remove it and move it to its own drive. Then you can follow these steps. So next, we're going to type CMD and run this as administrator. And this will open up the command prompt box right here. From here, you'll need to type in this command. I'll leave it in the video description. This sets the Windows Boot Manager to the default Windows EFI bootloader. So that's what we need to do right here. This means it will just boot straight into Windows instead of having the GRUB menu there. Now we can type bcd edit space / enum space firmware, and this will give us a list of all of the entries. So we're going to push enter, and what we're looking for here is all of the firmware application identifier numbers for Linux. There might be a couple of them, there may be just one of them, and we're looking for whatever version of Linux you've used. Now we're looking here and we can see Ubuntu. That's because Linux Mint is based off of Ubuntu. So we're going to copy this identifier number here in these braces, and we're going to use that to remove that entry. And that means it will be removed from our system. I only have one entry here, but you might have two, so just make sure you're looking for just the Linux ones. Highlight the identifier number and type bcd edit space / delete and then your identifier number, which is listed here. Yours will be different to mine, so just paste that in, press enter, and you should see the operation completed successfully. You can check using the bcd edit space / enum space firmware command again to see whether the entry has been removed. And you can see the entry has now been removed from our system. So next we can move on to the last phase of the process of removing Linux from your system completely. So we need to do one more step here, and that's going to be using diskpart. So from the command prompt window, type diskpart, all one word, and this will take us into the diskpart tool that we can use. So press enter, and from here we should have a prompt saying diskpart. Now we need to list disk, and this will list all the disks on our system. You can see that I've only got one. So now we need to select disk 0. Yours might be different, so select your disk. So I'm selecting disk 0. That has my Windows system on it. Now we've got that done, we can list the partition. So let's go ahead and type that out right here and press enter, and it will give us the partition. And you can see we do have on there the system partition 1. That's the one we need to select. Yours might be different. If it is, then just select the system partition. So I'm going to type out select partition 1. Just make sure you're not selecting the wrong partition here. You need to just select the system partition. So let's go ahead and type that out and press enter. Now from here, what we need to do is assign a drive letter to it, because we want to be able to mount it so we can see it, and we can then remove the contents, which is the Ubuntu folder inside there. So we're going to assign letter Z, and that's because it's very rarely used. So now we can exit out of diskpart. Now we need to do cd space /d space z :/EFI. And what this is going to do is change the directory to that location. So that will take us into our EFI partition. Now we can type dir, and this will give us all the contents inside of that partition there. And you can see there is an Ubuntu entry. So we need to remove this. So to do that, all you need to do is type out this next command, and it's rmdir space /s space /q space z :/EFI /Ubuntu. Now yours might not be Ubuntu, it might be a different type of distro that you're using, and if that is the case, then you would put in the different folder name for your Linux distro that you've used to install on your system. In this case it's Ubuntu, so I'm going to put Ubuntu in that place and then press enter, and it will delete that entry from our EFI partition. So that's now done, and that's now gone. We can type dir to check, and you can see it's now been removed. And all we need to do now is just remove the drive letter from that entry. So we can do mount vol space z : space /d, and then you could push enter and it will remove that entry. So now we should be back up and running. You can restart your system and it should boot straight into Windows. If it doesn't, you need to go into your BIOS and change the boot order in your BIOS to boot to Windows as your first priority, because Linux has now been removed. But in this case, it's already been changed, so I don't have to worry about that, and it goes straight into Windows. But if you have issues, then go into your BIOS and change your boot order to Windows partition, Windows Boot Manager, and not Linux, and you should be good to go. And that's it. You can see here everything has been removed from the system, and you're back to having a normal clean system with just Windows on it. Now you can install Linux again onto its own drive. That's what is more advisable than using one single drive with Windows and Linux partitioned, and then basically using it as a dual boot, because if something goes wrong, it's going to mess up your system. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below, whether this has been helpful. My name has been Brian from briteccomputers.co.uk. Big shout out to all my YouTube members. I really do appreciate the support, and I shall catch you in the next video. Bye for now.